So it's a new month, new theme, and August is a great month, I think anyway, for going through that pile, or at least list, if not an actual pile, a list of books that you've been meaning to read, or perhaps that pile of books that you have by your bedside or on your desk, or loaded up already on your Kindle that you haven't read yet. August is a good month to dip your toe into some of those books, right? Does anybody do that during the month of August? Anybody have a reading list? Let me just see. How many of you have a reading list? Right. How many have more than a dozen books on that reading list? Right. I do too. And as Lonnie and I were on vacation, many of you know, some of you know where we went, others don't. We went to Lake Powell, spent 2 weeks on a houseboat, which is like a floating hotel without the maid service or the restaurants. Floating hotel on the Powell, and then we had our friends have a motorboat, so we had an opportunity to tool around and do amazing things. So it was a gorgeous time to have adventures and fun, but also to sit and relax and read. And I have to admit, I did not take one spiritual book, just want you to know. Not one. I just read novels, and I loved that. It was great fun, great novels. But I also like using the month of August here to pull a couple of books that I've had on my reading list, spiritual books that I haven't gotten to yet, and it kind of forces me, if you will, to read them so I can talk about them. I did that last August, and I decided to do that this August again. But unlike last August, I did a book every week. We couldn't go very deep in the books when we just do one book, in 20, quote unquote, 20 minutes. My version of 20 minutes, yes. So anyway, we're going to take 2 weeks per book this month and just do 2 of my reading list books, but we're going to do 2 books that were really high on the list, and one of them, and the one that we'll look at today, is called Living Big by Pam Grout. How many of you know who Pam Grout is? Yes, she was with us last year, and the author of they became very famous New York Times bestseller books, E Squared and then E Cubed. And this one was published, it was interesting, it was originally written in 2001, but I believe this is her book that she wrote, and it didn't really do much. And then she had a shift in the way she looked at life and the way she viewed her books, and republished it in 2015, and it took off like crazy. So this is a 2015 book with a new title, but more importantly than that, a new attitude about whether or not it would be successful. So that's the book we're going to explore for this week and next. And then the following 2 weeks, we will explore a book that actually Roger Webb told me about, and that is The Universe Has Your Back. Remember, you told me about that book by Gabrielle Bernstein. I haven't even dipped my toe into that one yet, but I know it's good because Roger said it is, so we're going to, and if it's no good, it's all his fault. So there we go. No, it absolutely is. I have dipped my toe into it. But today, we're going to look at living big. So the question of the morning is, what does it mean to live big? What does it mean to live big? That's a topic that we talk about here a lot. Maybe not in those words, living big, but we talk a lot about, almost every week, about being the fullness of the expression of God that you came here to be. Of living from that place of knowing who and whose you are. And then the second piece of that is expressing it out in the world by sharing your gifts in big ways, by making a significant difference in the world. And that doesn't have to be by, becoming a politician or a world famous speaker, but by the way you live your life. The people you impact by the way you live your life can make a big difference in the world. So we always talk about living big here in one way or another, even though much of the world does not live that way. And Henry David Thoreau said a statement in his book, his writings, Walden, in the first chapter, that I think describes how a lot of people today live their life. He says, the mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. That hurts my heart. I don't want us to be in that mass of men or women. I want us to be in the mass of people who live big. So living big is about being the fullness of who you are. Ernest Holmes says that God is more completely expressed through the one who lives largely than the one who lives meagerly. That's at page 404, those of you who like to track where I'm quoting from. So again, God is more completely expressed through the one who lives largely than the one who lives meagerly. So Pam Grout begins her book, Living Big, with a great quote from Bob Savino. And the quote is this: every day, so that doesn't say once in your lifetime or every now and again, once a quarter. This is every day. You are signaled and summoned to embark on a journey beyond the boundaries of all you have ever known. Every day, you are signaled and summoned. You get invitation, basically, is what that is, through signals and a summoning. You are signaled and summoned to embark on a journey beyond the boundaries of all you have ever known. So we talk about that in a different way. We did a couple Sundays ago before I left. It might have been the Sunday before I left. And that is about how we move. We want to live on the green growing edge of our becoming and walk beyond that green growing edge. That's exactly what that's saying. And living big is about walking past that boundary. But again, many people don't do that. According to poet Rainier Marie Rilke, most people come to know only one corner of their room, one narrow strip on which they keep walking back and forth. Living big is about expanding our room. So you probably all know this statistic. I've shared it before, and if you've read any of these kind of books, you will have run across this statistic. And that science says that we have approximately 60,000 thoughts running through our head every day. 60,000 thoughts. So that's probably not new news to you. And I have said, this is not statistically or scientifically factual at all, but I have said that most of those thoughts are probably, for the most of humanity, are negative, and they're negative about ourselves. I just think, just from my experience 20 years as a minister, that that's true. But here's a statistic you might not know about those 60,000 thoughts. According to science, approximately 98% of those 60,000 thoughts, which is 58,800, that's 58,800% of our thoughts that we run through our brain every day are simply a rehash of the thoughts we had yesterday. What if they weren't? What if they weren't? Now, I'd like to say that because we are in a movement called New Thought, I am hoping that we don't quite live that statistic. Maybe we're at only 95%, which is only 57,000 thoughts going through our minds that are a rehash of yesterday. But as Greg just said, think about the possibilities. If we even let half of our 60,000 thoughts a day be new thoughts, really new thoughts, new ways of thinking about who we are, new ways of thinking about our ability, new ways of creating solutions to life's challenges. That quote that I shared this morning from Ernest Holmes says, we live for today. The fact is important that we live. He says, this doesn't remove us from our social obligation to support, a healthy society. Takes the morbidity out of it, but it doesn't remove us from our responsibility to be a catalyst for good in the world. So what if we had 30,000 thoughts a day that supported health and harmony and love, abundance and flow, peace? Think about the difference. That's living big. Grout writes this on page 2 of her book. We live at half throttle. We suit up for hopscotch when we could be performing miracles. We're completely oblivious to our own majesty, to the fact that the very heartbeat of the divine thrums through our veins. Living big is about tapping into the unused resources of our minds, loving with every ounce of our souls, and stepping up to claim our wildest dreams. She then goes on to say about her book, it is my highest hope that this book, and so I will say that our next 2 weeks will make some kind of impact on the world's consciousness. If we stay in the restrictive ruts we're now in, we will never solve the world's challenges. And there are a lot of challenges that need to be solved, a lot of things that could be done. We have kids taking guns to schools. We have mass destruction of our rainforest. We have neighbors so lonely that Jay Leno is their only friend. This was written in 2015. He still was a late-night host. We could now change that to Jimmy Fallon, right? So I have to ask, what are we going to do about it? No longer can we sit back, finger our remotes, and say, tut, 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 what a shame. We must act. We must grow out of our wimpy, she's kind of in your face. We must grow out of our wimpy, apathetic, small lives and take action. As long as there is prejudice, environmental destruction, people calling each other names, there is something big we must do. We don't have the right or luxury to be small anymore. The answer to your problems and the world's problems are one and the same, and that answer is you, us, now. So, yay to that, amen to that, hallelujah to that. Thank you. Thank you. Great book, by the way. Do we have it? Did we get it? Not quite yet. We'll have this book for next week if you want to read more specifically and in detail, because in 2 weeks we still can't cover the whole book. So today we are going to look at attitudes it takes to live big. We're going to explore 3 today, 3 next Sunday. So the 3 today are think big, which is an attitude of boldness, imagine big, which is an attitude of creativity, and play big, which is an attitude of happiness. And then next week we will look at bless big, give big, and love big. So again, today, think big, imagine big, play big. Think big is our first one, and that's an attitude of boldness, of being bold about who we are. Great song, perfect song that you sang, Deb, for being bold about who you are. How many of you know the book, Everything I Ever Needed to Know I Learned in Kindergarten? Robert Fulghum. There's no R in it. I always want to put an R in his name, and there's no R there. His book got turned into a play, and in the first act of the play, there is a scene where it's a kindergarten group, and the teacher says to the 40 kindergarten students, how many of you are dancers? And every little hand went up, I'm a dancer, I'm a dancer. And then the next question was, how many of you are singers? All the hands went up, I'm a singer, I'm a singer. And this is, how many of you are painters? I'm a painter, I'm a painter. How many of you are writers? Every hand went up, I'm a writer, I'm a writer. The scene shifts. We move to 4th grade. The same questions are asked, and only about 1/3 of the kids raise their hand. And then it shifts again, and we move to high school. Same group of kids. A teacher asks the same question. How many of you are painters? How many of you are artists? How many of you are writers? How many of you are singers? How many of you are dancers? And a very, very small amount of students raised their hand. Nobody raised their hand to all of them. What happened? What happened to the passion? What happened to the boldness? What happened to the proclamation that I am that? I can be that. I can do that. Well, this isn't to blame anyone or anything. It is what can happen in our lives. We can do it to ourselves. I'm going to give you an example a little bit of how I did that to myself. But however it happens, it happens. But what if today, so here's my question to you. What if today were a day that you said, I am going to have a new thought and a bold proclamation about who I am? What if today were the day that you stepped up in a bigger way about who you are? Now, you hear me preach that all the time. All the time I talk about be who you are. Yeah. But today I'm going to ask you, not yet, because I'm going to give you a chance to be processing this and freak out about it or think about it, one or the other, whichever you want to do. But I'm going to ask you later to make a bold proclamation, have a new thought about who you are. So just have that in the back of your mind as I continue to talk, that in a bit, I'm going to ask you to make a bold proclamation of a new thought about yourself. Okay? Are you ready to play with me on that? Yes. Say yes. Thank you. I would be really sad if you all said no. Let me give you an example. Let me just give you a quick little example of boldness. What's that? You're figuring it out already? Good, perfect. You're in. All right, good. I'll hear from you in a minute then. So Walt Disney was a little boy, and he was in school, and he was drawing in the margins of his paper flowers. And the teacher walked by, looked at what he was doing. She tapped him on the shoulder. She said, "Walt, honey, those are beautiful flowers. But I just want you to know that flowers don't have faces." And he looked up at her. He looked her straight in the eye and he said, "Mine do." Right? And his did. and his flowers in Alice in Wonderland, I think, was the movie, this animated movie that they not only had faces, they danced and they sang and they talked. And look at the good that man did in the world because he was bold. So again, I'm going to be asking you in a little bit to proclaim a new bold thought about yourself. But before that, I want to talk about the second idea, which is to imagine big. Imagine big is an attitude of creativity. And I know when some people hear about creativity, they're like, "Oh, I'm not creative. Don't talk about that." Believe me, we all are creative. So take a breath, especially if you don't think this applies to you, and listen up. So Pam Grout writes this. Usually when we aspire to be spiritual, we think of things like being kinder, being more understanding, saying more prayers, being more connected to God. But in order to fulfill our destiny as spiritual beings, we must also become more creative, open more to the magic and to the deep vistas that gush through our souls. I love that. In order to be more spiritual, to fulfill our destiny as spiritual beings, we must be even more creative. And we can squelch our creativity just like we can squelch our boldness. So I had an experience of this. I did it to myself. I was just little. So I loved, as soon as I was old enough to, hold a crayon, I loved to draw. And I would draw. It was really funny because all of my people looked exactly the same, except one had a skirt on and one had a pair of pants on. But they were little stick figures, but they always had eyelashes. Figure. Go figure that, right? They always had long eyelashes, and they had, their lips were perfect, and they had nice hair, and then they had little stick figures in either a little skirt or a pair of pants. That's what I drew them over and over, and I loved it. I loved drawing. And then I had a little sister. My little sister was born, and she's now old enough, so she's 3 years younger than I am. Let's say she's about 3 and I'm 6. She wants to do what her big sister does. So she sees me with my little crayons drawing, and she picks up a crayon in her fat little chubby hand, and she starts to draw. I am drawing, I'm 6, and I'm drawing stick figures with eyelashes. My sister is drawing 3-dimensional tea parties, pretty much. Maybe that's a tad of exaggeration, but I looked at her drawing and went, "Oh, dear me." Holy Toledo. That girl, a little girl, can draw. And my sister grew up to be a commercial artist. She's an exquisitely good artist. But what I learned myself was my stick figures, her amazing drawings. I can't draw. She can. I have no I'm not a drawer. I'm not an artist. She is. Now, the fact is, she was a better artist than I am, no doubt about that. But I extrapolated, I can't draw, to this. I'm not creative. And I believed that. And I took it into my knowing, and I lived a good part of my life, up until I was in my 40s, thinking I do not have a creative bone in my body. As a matter of fact, I would always say, my sister got all the creative genes in our family. I have other talents, but creativity is not one of them. I said that, I believed it. I didn't believe it, I knew it. It was just the way it is, until I learned that it wasn't. Until I learned that that's actually not right. Okay, I can't draw worth beans. I can do great stick figures with eyelashes, but I can't draw. But drawing is only one tiny little dimension of being creative. There are an infinite number of ways to be creative. And so we are all creative, and there's a longing in all of us to have an outlet for that creativity. There is always a longing in all of us to have an outlet for being creative. So, what is yours? I'm going to ask you a question in a couple of minutes. What is a creative nudging that has been on you that you have not yet or have not fully said yes to? Or is there a new thought you could have about your creativity? I'm going to ask you in a couple of minutes to identify that. But I want to read this from Ernest Holmes, because this comparison thing that we do, that I did with my sister, can just completely squelch our creativity. So Ernest writes in this thing called You. You exist that divine feeling, fire, imagination, and creativity may be expressed through you. The Spirit comes to you with a new and fresh creativity. That's what I'm asking you to tap into today. You need not ask what others have done or how they have done it. Be yourself and express life as you find it. Never imitate. Trust the self. Find the self in God and God in yourself. You are naturally creative. So imagine big and have an attitude of creativity. Now, I'm kind of speaking at this point to those of you, because I don't put myself in this category anymore, who think you're not creative. Everything I just said are for you. Now I want to turn to those of you who are, and know you are, think you are. You have gifts that you know. You guys can even be worse than those of us who don't think we're creative, because you don't think you're creative enough. It's not good enough. As soon as it's good enough, then I'll express it. I remember when Greg Braden was here. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That was good. Deb led the lead on that, and it was in harmony. That's good. When he was here, he talked about a friend of his who is an amazing guitar player and composer. And his friend shared a piece of music that he was writing with Greg. You remember this story? And Greg said, "That is exquisite. That is gorgeous. When are you going to publish it?" "Oh, it's not ready yet." And Greg said, yeah, it is. He goes, no, it's not ready yet. "Well, how long have you been working on it?" "It was like years." He's been working on this piece for years because it's not ready yet to get out there. "Oh, but it was ready yet." So you who know that you have, a specific creative talent like music or cake making or sewing or whatever, art, whatever it might be, know that it is good enough. Now, get it out there. Have a new thought about it and expand and think bigger about your ability to create. All right, so think big, bold about yourself. Imagine big. Expand your experience and idea of what it means to live creatively. I will ask you to talk to me about both of those things in a minute, but the next one, I want to do the last one, and that's play big. Yeah. Play big, which is having an attitude of happiness. An attitude of happiness. So, as I said a minute ago, Lonnie and I just got off of 2 weeks on Lake Powell, and it's really easy to play big when you're in a place like that. How many of you have been on that lake, like back on that lake, and you know what it's like? Oh man, if not many of you have done that. If you like kind of camping and boating and you like being on the water, it is heaven. It is heaven on earth. It is so incredibly beautiful. It is majestic. So it's really easy to play big when you've got no responsibilities other than, gee, what bathing suit am I going to wear today? And what canyon are we going to explore? And what book am I going to read? That's pretty easy to play big. But it's so important that we all have those moments where we get to do that. Now, maybe it's not going to Lake Powell, maybe that's not your thing, but give yourself space to play. I feel so refreshed. Many people have asked me about our trip, and I said it was the exact perfect combination of adventure and relaxation. And it was. It feels so good and so recharged. So if you haven't played yet this summer, I know many of you have. I've talked about your adventures in various places. But if you haven't taken time to play yet this summer, make sure you do. But this is bigger than going out and just playing. It's about having an attitude of happiness all the time. And that is an internal experience, not an external experience. So I want to read a story. I don't know if it's true or not. It came across my radar years ago. I love it. You've probably heard it before, but I want to share it with you again. This is about the internal business of having an attitude of happiness. The 92-year-old petite, well-poised, and proud lady who is fully dressed each morning by 8 o'clock with her hair fashionably coiffed and makeup perfectly applied, even though she is legally blind, is moving into a nursing home today. Her husband of 70 years recently passed away, making the move necessary. After many hours of waiting patiently in the lobby of the nursing home, she smiled sweetly when told her room was finally ready. As she maneuvered her walker to the elevator, the aide provided a visual description of her tiny room, including the eyelet sheets that had been hung on her window. "Oh, I just love it," she stated with enthusiasm of an 8-year-old having just been presented with a new puppy. "Mrs. Jones, you haven't even seen the room yet. Just wait," the aide said. "That doesn't have anything to do with it," Mrs. Jones replied. "Happiness is something you decide on ahead of time. Whether I like my room or not doesn't depend on how the furniture is arranged. It's how it's arranged in my mind. And I've already decided to love it. I make decisions like that every morning when I wake up. I have a choice. I can spend the day in bed recounting the difficulty I have with the parts of my body that no longer work, or I can get out of bed and be thankful for the ones that do. Each day is a gift, and as long as my eyes are open, I'll focus on the new day and all the happy memories I've stored away just for this time in my life." One of the most radical decisions we can ever make is the decision to be happy. Ernest Holmes tells us in the textbook at 269, anything that will enable us to express greater life, greater happiness, greater power, so long as it harms no one, must be the will of God for us. As much life as we can conceive can become part of our experience. So if we want to live big, we must choose to live happy. I love this statement from Pam Grout. She says, "You're the only one who can decide if your glass is half empty or half full. Enthusiastic, childlike joy is not something you need to grow out of. One of the greatest ways to serve your fellow human beings is to figure out a way to enjoy yourself and to let people know that enjoying yourself is a good thing. Vow today," which I'm going to ask you to do in a minute, "to approach your life with a sense of aliveness. Intentionally decide that you're only going to look for the good and concentrate on the beautiful. When you decide to practice the attitude of happiness, boredom turns to exploration. Canceled flights turn into parties. Waiting in line becomes a great opportunity to meet new people. Vacuuming the floor is a ballet performed to Van Morrison. And of course, a rainy day calls for an indoor picnic with 5 kinds of cheese. Make this revolutionary attitude switch now. Your joie de vivre will be contagious. Maybe you'd even make the 6 o'clock news." Isn't that great? So, I've been warning you. I'm going to be asking you, and now is the time for my ask. Thinking big, meaning having an attitude of boldness about who you are. Imagining big, having a new attitude about creativity. And playing big, having a new attitude about happiness. We're going to take them one at a time, and this is how I want to do it. So think for a moment. If you want to just close your eyes, you maybe already have it because you had the most warning about this one. But think for a moment about a new thought you could have right now about you, about who you are. A big, bold thought about who you are. You've never had this thought before. Okay, I'll give you this. Maybe you have had this thought before, but you've negated it. I'm seeing head shake. All right. You've got one? All right. Thank you. So, turn to a neighbor. Just turn to a neighbor. Yeah, you knew you were going to have to do this. Now, nobody has to do this, but I invite you to because speaking it out loud is so powerful. So, turn to somebody, introduce yourself if you don't know them, and just say your statement. That's all. No big conversation. Just share your statement with each other. Go. You have 30 seconds. Okay, come back to me now. Come back to me now. Ooh, there was a lot of aliveness in this room. I love it. A lot of aliveness. All right, come back, come back. We're not done yet. We're not done yet. I want you to come back to me. I know, it's very exciting. Now, the new thought about your creativity. So it could either be a thought about your ability to be creative, that could be a new thought, or maybe there's something nudging you that's been on your heart to create, and you've not said yes to it yet. You got something? Because we got the juices flowing. So turn to somebody else. Oh, you're going to meet somebody else. Turn to somebody else. Introduce yourself if you don't know them, and tell what that is. Say what it is. Come on, let's go. I want just as much enthusiasm. All right, come back to me now. Come back to me now. All right, last one. Last one. What is a new idea, a new thought you could have about happiness, about playing bigger, about experiencing more joy in your life? Who has such a thought that you want to tell me? Okay, Mary Beth, tell me and I'll repeat it so everyone can hear you. What is your new thought about happiness and joy? I am marvelously happy teaching at Madison number 1. Let's give her a hand. Thank you. Yes, Kathy. My joy and happiness are not dictated by my circumstances. Good, 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 good. Rick. Who's getting, I missed the first of it. Your family? Your family's getting together today, or family reunion, you're going to teach them all how to dance. And he knows how to dance. All right, couple more. What else? What else? Happiness and play. Yes, Donna. My personal sun shines brightly every day. I love it. Okay, come on, let me hear you. Somebody else. Yes, yes, yes. I am infinitely prospered and joyfully share it. Give yes, beautiful, beautiful. All right. I am love and I am supported by the whole universe. Oh, these are so good. I just want to keep going, but it's time to stop. Okay, couple more, and then we'll anchor it all in prayer. Give me 2 more. I know you've got them. Have we exhausted? Yes, thank you, Robert. I have the power to change the circumstance to allow for happiness. That's a good one. Nice. Thank you. Thank you. I'll get you, Sharon. Raleigh. I find happiness in both the big and small things of my everyday life. Beautiful. All right. Last 2, Sharon and then Greg. So for those watching online, and if you couldn't hear her, she said, my roses are so beautiful this year that I'm going to win first place at the fall fair. Beautiful, beautiful. Mr. Peterson, bring it on home.
I'm either living and it's gone.
Because you just embodied it. You're so excited.
When people say to me all the time, God, you're so happy all the time, I say, every morning I have a choice. I can be happy or I can be not.
Every day I have a choice. I can be happy or I can be not, and I choose to be happy. So let us say that together. That's going to be our closing affirmation. Every day I have a choice. To be happy or not. I choose to be happy. And so it is. Come on, that was our prayer, and so it is.